My little sister's hand was trembling in mine. We stood outside the iron gates of what used to be our home. Our feet were blistered, our clothes soaked from the rain, and our stomachs empty. The wind howled like it knew we didn't belong there anymore. I pressed the bell again, harder this time. Behind the curtains, I saw her, the woman who married our father. Samantha. She was wrapped in a silk robe, sipping tea like nothing had happened. She saw us. Her gaze froze for half a second, then she turned away. A man's shadow crossed the hallway behind her. Not my father. Someone else. Younger. Smirking. My throat burned. I swallowed hard. "We should go," my sister, Emily, whispered. Her voice cracked. She looked like she was about to collapse, her coat clinging to her small frame. I looked up at the house, every brick now a stranger. That porch, once home to birthdays and bedtime stories, now belonged to liars. It was the moment I knew our father didn't throw us out. They did. And in that moment, the fear in me curled into something else. Something sharp. Something that would wait. I'm Rachel Carter. 17. Until recently, I believed families didn't fall apart. At least, not like this. Before school, every morning, I'd braid Emily's hair while she told me about her dreams, sometimes wild adventures, sometimes ones where our mom was still alive. Emily is 9, small for her age, but way too smart for her own good. Our mom passed away when she was 5. I still remember the way she'd sob through the night, clinging to me like a lifeline. And Dad, he never let go of either of us. Jonathan Carter. My father. He was one of the good ones, an engineer who always brought home wild science facts with dinner. After Mom died, he became everything: chef, driver, tutor, bedtime storyteller. He made us lunchboxes with sticky notes inside, "Smile today. You're stronger than you think." And for a while, that was enough. Then came Samantha. She was polished, poised, smelled like vanilla and expensive perfume. Dad met her through some charity event. She wore sympathy like jewelry, shiny and hollow. But Dad? He looked alive around her. For a while, I believed maybe life was giving us a second chance. Then came the shifts. Dad began missing our school pickups. He grew forgetful. His legs, once steady, trembled when he stood. His handwriting, which used to be sharp and neat, turned shaky. He stopped reading books. He stopped laughing. And Samantha? She started staying out late. Claimed she needed space. But her eyes gleamed with something that didn't sit right. One morning, I came down to find Dad slumped over the breakfast table. His tea cold, a trail of drool on his chin. Next to him was a bottle of new pills. "Doctor's orders," Samantha said, not even looking up from her phone. Something wasn't right. I knew it in my bones. By the time I found the courage to ask questions, it was already too late. Dad was in a wheelchair. He barely spoke. His eyes wandered as though trying to remember who we were. Samantha said it was a rare neurological condition. Early onset. Aggressive, she claimed. I'm doing everything I can. But she wouldn't let me see his medical files. She controlled every appointment, every pill. And when neighbors came over to check on him, she kept the visits short. She said he needed rest. Then came the stranger. It was a Thursday afternoon. I had left school early and walked home. I heard laughter before I opened the front door. A man in a leather jacket stepped out of the kitchen. Mid-30s. Tattoo on his neck. He was holding Samantha's hand like they were teenagers at a mall. She froze. "Oh, this is my cousin, Bryan," she said with a dry laugh. "He just dropped by." Bryan. Cousin. Sure. That night, I tried to talk to Dad. His mouth barely formed words, but his eyes were soaked with something deeper than pain. It was fear. A week later, Samantha called Emily and me downstairs. She was dressed to go out. Perfume strong. Heels echoing on the hardwood. "Your father doesn't want you here anymore," she said calmly, like she was reciting the weather. I laughed, confused. "What are you talking about?" She handed me a duffel bag. "There's some of your stuff. I'll send the rest." "You're throwing us out?" He said it's better this way. He needs quiet. Less stress. Emily began to cry. "I want Daddy," she sobbed. "He's resting," Samantha snapped. Don't wake him. I stepped toward the stairs, and she blocked me. That's enough, Rachel. That was the last time we saw him inside that house. She shut the door behind us. We slept at the bus station that night. Emily's head rested on my lap. Her hair was damp, her lips slightly cracked. I kept my jacket over her, trying to keep her warm, even though the cold had already settled into our bones. Every creak of the station doors made me flinch. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I had to stay alert. Someone had to. The second night was worse. We tried the women's shelter, but it was full. The lady at the desk gave me a blanket and a stale muffin and apologized. Emily hadn't eaten since the day before. I gave her the muffin and told her I wasn't hungry. On the third day, as we sat on the curb outside the corner store, a silver SUV slowed beside us. Rachel? I looked up. It was Mr. Reynolds, Dad's old college roommate. A retired judge. He had salt and pepper hair, a stiff posture, and eyes that missed nothing. He parked and got out quickly, his face pale. What the hell happened to you two? I hesitated. Then everything poured out. I told him about Samantha. The pills. The boyfriend. Dad's decline. Being thrown out like garbage. Emily clung to me like a shadow. Mr. Reynolds listened quietly. When I finished, he didn't say a word, just opened the car door and helped Emily in. That night, we slept in a warm bed. He gave us soup, soft towels, toothbrushes that weren't from a gas station. And when the lights were off, he came and sat across from me at the kitchen table. You're 17, he said. This world doesn't hand out justice. But it can be taken. Carefully. Legally. You want your father's truth to come out? Then listen closely. We'll need to be smart, patient, and fearless. I nodded, hands clenched tight. I'll do anything, I said. Just don't let her get away with it. That night, as Emily slept beside me in a bed that smelled like lavender instead of fear, I stared at the ceiling. For the first time since everything collapsed, I felt something burn in my chest. It wasn't anger. It was focus. I couldn't sleep. The moonlight spilled across the ceiling like it was watching me think. I got up and tiptoed into the small hallway, careful not to wake Emily. My fingers itched for something: paper, pen, purpose. Mr. Reynolds had given me a notebook and a ballpoint pen earlier, just in case I wanted to write anything down. I grabbed it and sat at the kitchen table alone in the quiet. That silence, after everything, felt almost louder than the street noise. It had its own weight. I started writing everything I remembered. The names of Dad's medications. The day I found the mystery pills. Times Samantha kept visitors away. Descriptions of Bryan. The day we were thrown out. Dad's change in behavior over time. Her lies. Her timing. Her greed. It was all there. It poured out of me like it had been waiting. And then, at the bottom of the page, I wrote something that gave me chills. They didn't break me. They lit me. I stared at that line for a while. That was when I realized this wasn't just about revenge. It was about taking back the truth. Mr. Reynolds found me in the morning, still at the table, eyes red but focused. You ready? He asked. I nodded. I am now. The days after Mr. Reynolds promised me justice were some of the hardest I'd ever faced. We started digging, slowly, carefully, like detectives searching for cracks in a wall that looked unbreakable. First, we demanded Dad's medical records. Samantha fought us every step, lawyers sending cease and desist letters, phone calls from intimidating men, attempts to block our requests. But Mr. Reynolds knew the system. He filed formal petitions, and slowly the files arrived. They told a story of pills changed without explanation, visits canceled, and tests avoided. A trail of lies. Next came the financial documents. That was even worse. We discovered hidden accounts in Dad's name, transfers moving money out of their main accounts and into shadowy places. We uncovered charges on credit cards we never saw. Bills paid for Samantha's expensive tastes, vacations, even that new sports car Bryan drove. Every document was a piece of a puzzle, but the puzzle was huge. I remember nights pacing the small apartment Mr. Reynolds lent us, reading lines of bank statements, scribbling notes, trying to connect dots. One day, a crucial witness went silent. A neighbor who'd seen Samantha sneaking pills into Dad's drinks stopped returning calls. Another time, an accountant we hired seemed to pull back, wary of the legal heat. Emily stopped smiling. She didn't understand why I kept working, why we couldn't just forget it all and move on. Then came Melissa, Bryan's ex-wife, who had nothing to gain by coming forward except the truth. She handed over voice recordings, hours of Samantha and Bryan plotting, laughing about the perfect scam, mocking my dad's sickness, and planning how to frame me as unstable. Hearing Samantha's voice on those tapes, so calm yet cruel, sent chills through me. But it also ignited something I hadn't felt in weeks: hope. We gathered every scrap of evidence. We found the handwriting expert who had backed out initially and convinced him to join again, explaining the new evidence. The forensic accountant returned too, following the paper trail that now made sense. But progress was slow. Sometimes, the weight of it all crushed me. There were nights when I cried, exhausted and scared. But every time I looked at Emily's hopeful face, I remembered why I had to keep fighting. The day we stepped into the courtroom, I was terrified. The cold marble walls, the low hum of murmurs, it felt like stepping into a cage. But I wasn't alone. Emily held my hand tightly. Mr. Reynolds stood beside me, a quiet fortress of support. The judge looked stern but fair, scanning the piles of evidence on the table. Then, the moment that changed everything, the voice recordings. The courtroom was silent as Samantha's calm, mocking laughter filled the room through the speakers. She said those things? Samantha's lawyer whispered, panic flickering. The judge leaned forward, eyes sharp. We will hear from the forensic handwriting expert. The expert laid out his findings. Dad's signature on several financial documents was forged, confirmed by detailed analysis of pen pressure, stroke, and letter formation. Then, the forensic accountant took the stand, detailing how money had been siphoned off into secret accounts, how purchases unrelated to Dad's lifestyle had been made. Samantha's face paled. Finally, Melissa gave her testimony. Her voice steady, she described the manipulation she witnessed, the schemes Samantha and Bryan plotted. The courtroom shifted. Samantha's carefully built image cracked under the weight of evidence. The judge's voice carried quiet authority. Justice is not about vengeance, Miss Carter. It is about uncovering truth, restoring what was wrongfully taken. He looked at me. You have fought well. For the first time in months, I dared to hope. After the verdict, Emily and I stepped outside the courthouse into crisp autumn air. The sky was clear, but my chest still felt heavy. We hadn't gotten the house back, it was already sold, but we had something more valuable: the truth. With Samantha and Bryan exposed, their reputation shattered, the community began to see what had really happened. Supporters reached out. Neighbors who had stayed silent now came forward with stories. I started volunteering at a local shelter, wanting to help others who'd been thrown out or betrayed. Emily blossomed, returning to school with a smile. She started piano lessons again, the same ones Mom had wanted her to take. I finally let myself grieve for Dad without shame or fear. Some nights, I sat on the porch of our small apartment, watching leaves fall. I felt the weight of loss, but also the steady pulse of new beginnings. Mr. Reynolds visited often, a reminder that family can be chosen and built. I learned that healing wasn't linear. There were days of sadness, days of strength, sometimes both mixed. But through it all, I was becoming more than the scared girl standing outside that gate. I was becoming a woman who owned her story. Revenge wasn't the fire I imagined it to be. It wasn't a storm, roaring and wild. Instead, it was slow. Like winter thawing into spring, quiet, relentless, patient. It was the steady gathering of facts, the quiet courage to stand up when no one else would, the small acts of truth that built into something undeniable. I learned that sometimes, the greatest victory isn't in hurting those who wronged you. It's in reclaiming yourself. In finding your voice when it's been stolen. And in letting the truth shine, even when everything else is dark. As I watch Emily play piano, her small fingers finding notes with grace and hope, I realize that this story isn't just about loss or betrayal. It's about survival, about strength, about the quiet power of standing tall, not with fists clenched, but with heart open. And that is a kind of revenge no one can ever take away.